So welcome to another episode of Simon Says. We have Lyra here today.
Hello.
So after many weeks of kind of focusing on Malaysia, we want to go back to one of our favorite topic, right? The American election with less than 40 days to go. Now let me begin by just quoting what London Mayor Sadiq Khan was saying. And he said this, everyone is watching the American election with great interest. And he went on to say that it is because what happens in America affects the rest of the world, whether you like it or not. And I think that's always what we've been saying, right? And why we took such a interest. But then recently, of course, we've been doing some, research into, the founding of Malaya with Reid Commission. And it's so interesting that the whole dynamic between federal and state, how much power the Malay should have in terms of their special right. All those kind of things are very reflective of the political development in America, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar because I always thought we are moving away from that central government, and yet here it is in the Reid Commission that says that we recommend a strong central government. But I felt like they were also a bit more conservative in the sense that they did say that, hey, let's review the special rights of the Malay after 15 years and things like that, although that never happened. So I think in a lot of ways, I think there have been that sort of trend to decolonize. I mean, even in America as well, people are talking about repatriation and like just keep going back to, hey, you were the one who victimized me first. So it's like if you keep playing the blame game, then how are you gonna ever move on from there? So it's really like, I guess the real slap to the people is really when you have seen how bad it is, the economy, and people are actually suffering, and you have like inflation that is like shooting off the roof, and yet people are still saying that, hey, it's because we were very much marginalized, but you were also quote unquote marginalized when you were during Trump's era, and yet the policies were more favorable to them.
And that's really the root of the critical race theory, right? And when you look at how Hamas tried to justify terrorism, it's really the same thing. But the whole election cycle really kind of reminded me that every generation, they will have to fight their own battle. So we look at America, for example, there were three, from their history, you look at the founding period, they had to fight the British. Then, of course, you have Civil War, which was the whole nation was very divided. Then you have the Great Depression and the two great wars. And now I think you are at the fourth era where the people basically will have to choose where they want to stand. And, people talk about how 2016 was the most important election. Then 2020 was the most important election. Now, finally, they say 2024 could be the defining, it could determine whether America continue to lead the world or they will regress and kind of forfeit their role.
I mean, interesting that you were talking about like we are in the fourth sort of era.
Yeah, the word they use is crucible, the fourth crucible.
But so it sort of reminded me of the time when there was that contention with the guerrilla war that was happening in Vietnam itself. So I think that was really the first time ever that people begin to see that, hey, you can actually mix politics with the war strategy as well.
Yep.
That because I think it was one of the leader of Vietnam who was leading that sort of guerrilla war against the American. And what he said was that we actually win more wars in the streets of Washington than actually fighting that war in the jungle of Vietnam. So I thought it was very, very interesting, and it's almost like we are going back to that moment again where a lot of it is actually a lot of propaganda. So I think these days, if you're even dare to mention the word propaganda, hey, I mean, we'll almost like you're almost guaranteed that you're gonna be muted in a lot of social media platforms. So it's like, how dare you say this?
Now, just for our viewers and listeners, what is actually at stake for 2024. So I did a quick research. Now, of course, I think some maybe people don't realize that the entire American Congress, now they have Congress and they have Senate, but Senate usually they just call it Senate, and the lower house, we have lower house, they call it Congress, but in reality, the American, it's not like one is higher or lower, it's just different role. So every 2 years, the entire Congress is up for election. I think that is a surprise to many, many people. Then, of course, you have the presidency. And I think up to 13 states will have their whole legislature being voted in, and also governor, and 1/3 of Senate. So it's quite significant. But the other thing about American system, which is very unique, is they have the midterm concept, which is once you have a new president, then 2 years immediately into the presidency, the nation has an opportunity to change the Congress, because Congress is the purse, is the one that sets the budget. So they are really, really very balanced, I would say. But again, every time we say you want more rights, you want local election, you're going to have to play your part and be a participant. So that's just now the other thing, of course, that really I think blows a lot of people's mind is in US, certain states you can vote for your police. Imagine, we stay in Old Kent Road. No, you're going to be an Old Kent Road resident soon, right? And we had the police station here at Brickfield, right? And imagine there's a police chief of Brickfield, and he will come out and say, I have a crime policy, I have a traffic policy, I'm not going to enforce the bus lane. And sure you'll get a lot of vote, right? So those kind of things. And that's what exactly they did. They called them sheriff, and you can vote your district attorney, which is a chief prosecutor. You can vote judges even in some states. It's mind-blowing, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think the part about voting judges is the most mind-blowing, because you always thought like they are elected by the recommendation of the president, that's it.
Yeah.
So
that's British.
Yeah, because in Malaysia that is generally what it is. At the recommendation of the prime minister, then you form a cabinet. At the recommendation of prime minister, then you have the judges and things like that. So I think for us, all this thing would be, for us Malaysians, it will be totally a foreign concept. And I think that's where I think we are coming into that moment where a lot of accountability, I think really the word accountability is at stake here, because I mean, if you don't want to play your part here, I think who's going to change the society? Because you cannot forever rely on that strong central government, because one day, I mean, they decide, why should they decide what we should be eating and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned accountability and responsibility, because I was just hearing one analyst, and he said he's not particularly political, okay? But he said, look, and which I think is going to pivot to what we want to discuss today, the 7 swing states. And it's interesting that even when I talk to people who are not so familiar with the American system, maybe they are more, they kind of follow more the China CCP news cycle. But even then, they realize the importance of the 7 swing states. But what you are saying is that, look, this election, it's not about California, it's not about Texas, it's not about Florida, it's not about New York. Of course, sometimes when you have such a great shift like Reagan time, all those states kind of fall in line. But we are not looking at, those are not really in play. And so the 7 swing states, what you do right now, the next 40 days in those 7 states will basically determine the election outcome.
Yeah.
And so the 7 states, maybe you like to read them out.
Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the last 2 election cycles, so 2020 for Biden won 6 out of 7. 2016, Trump won 6 out of 7. So whoever wins the majority, so there's a lot of permutation there, but whoever wins the majority of the swing states likely will get into White House. And so maybe this episode, we just want to kind of focus on the swing states. And that's the other thing, right? Like, have you heard people say, oh, America is not a democracy. How can you... first people really dislike the electoral college concept. Then they say, how can a few states determine the fate of the entire nation? I mean, what do you say to those kind of criticism?
Wow. I mean, I think because they are actually, I think the electoral college is actually quite balanced, right? The way they...
Yeah, it's based on
distribute the whole
population.
thing.
So the representation is correct, and... But it's really like, for example, if you look at, I think Malaysia is we have a not the same but comparable model. For example, the last few general election, we look at the Malay votes in Malaya, it's kind of split. Previously, it was just two, right? UMNO and Pakatan. Those say Pakatan still have passed, right? Then after you have Perikatan, then it's sort of still split. Of course, Perikatan has more, but generally in Malaya, you're looking at very divided, the rural and city. So when you have this kind of situation, then East Malaysian states will be the kingmaker. So the concept of kingmaker is hardly novel in Westminster system. So it just happened that with the balance shifting here and there, the 7 states have become kingmakers in recent times.
I think it's really the voice of the people of the respective states are actually being represented. So I think that's really what is most important here, because a lot of people will be wanting to criticize, but here you are actually trying to rally the support from those people who are actually staying within the states for betterment of the state, for betterment of their territory, and even where they are staying, the neighborhood and things like that. So naturally, I think they should be represented based on the population that there is. Because I mean, why should someone who is at the other state that is playing that is dictating how I should be staying here, you know? So I felt like that is a model that is really quite balanced in the sense that, so it shows that you shouldn't neglect those, especially those swing states, because
they are part of the union, you know?
Exactly. I mean, so no one can say that, hey, I'm sidelined. I mean, if you're sidelined, then you can swing to the other party altogether. So unlike here, it's almost like because I guess our two-party system, or it's almost like very, very skewed towards one side. So we never really see that opportunity to, because of the first past the post sort of system here.
Yeah, it's more skewed towards that. But of course, when you have two blocks that are very competitive, then certain swing. I mean, if you look at Malaysia, do we have who? I mean, who are the swing states? I mean, of course, our democracy is kind of not so mature. I mean, when I say mature, I think we don't have such a we don't have a long historical track record to kind of determine which states are swing, right? I mean, we talk about 308, right? March 2008, you have certain states change to Pakatan and they never kind of return back, right?
Yeah.
But then, well, maybe Sabah is a bit of swing state.
I think so.
Well, could Melaka, Negeri Sembilan, kind of. Johor could be a swing state. I mean, if UMNO could make a comeback.
Yeah.
Penang, Selangor, not really.
Hardly.
No, it's not competitive at all, right? The last.
It's almost like Texas.
Yeah. But you know, Texas used to be blue, right? Florida used to be blue.
It's so mind-blowing, as in. But I mean, ever since Ron DeSantis won it, it's almost like it's guaranteed that it's.
Yeah, because it came in and began to set voter ID law and things like that. And I tell you, when one party is strongly against voter ID, I mean, there's no other way to say other than they intend to cheat. So that's the Democrats for you. But anyway, let's come back to the 7 swing states. Now let me just kind of present some interesting facts, right? So going back to 2016, now I don't know if you recall 2016, right? And that's one of the things I felt very different. I mean, 2020 was a COVID election, everyone stay home and things like that. But 2016, remember, we have many debate, because even for Trump to get the nomination was a huge struggle. You know, we think, I mean, he was doing very well, but there's a lot of emotion flying. Then, of course, the 3 debates with Hillary also, you know, there's those sex tape exposure and then the email server exposure. It's like very drama, but this time you don't see that kind of drama. But anyway, we'll talk about why later. But one of the most interesting things is in the swing states, there are certain, they call it the deep blue wall of Democrats. So talking about the northern states, the Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And it's like a guarantee, it's like fixed deposit. So imagine Sarawak used to be a fixed deposit for Barisan Nasional, right?
Yeah.
So don't need to go, you will win. So one of the most interesting thing is that Hillary didn't even go to Wisconsin the last 4 weeks of her campaign. Not at all. And I think Wisconsin was a super surprise when she lost it. But even in 2020, Biden only won by 1 point. So it's very, very competitive. But anyway, what would you like to kind of talk about the seven swing states? I mean, anything that kind of interests you? I mean, of course, besides the fact that we're learning American geography, right?
Well, I think the first time that I was taking particular notice on Arizona was because of Carrie Lake.
Oh yeah. There was
That was like mind blowing because I mean a lot of it I felt like it was kind of like a spillover from the 2020 election because during her time then there was a lot of terms where you hear election rig and things like that.
Yep.
So it also happened during her time of race as well. So I think that itself shows that I was just wondering how divided are they, actually in that place, because when you're like listening to mainstream media and things like that, then only then you realize that, hey, actually those people are quite undecided, especially on like swing states. They are kind of on the fence.
That's why they're called swing, right?
Exactly. So I felt like this is not the time where you should be just sitting on the fence. You should be making a decision. However you want to decide, you should choose, because you can't be like saying that, nope, I don't want to choose, because I think there's a lot of that sort of voices where they're just saying that I don't want to vote because I don't vibe with these people.
Yeah. I mean, you get that feel in Malaysia also. I don't vibe with PMS. I don't vibe with pass for So I'm just going to sit home. But every time you do that, you are actually rendering an advantage, knowingly or unknowingly.
But these swing states, are they quite strong in the union?
Yeah, I mean the term swing state is actually quite interesting because it differs from era to era.
Right.
And of course, if we look at the Civil War, for example, you have North and South. But North and South, many states were not involved. Texas were not involved. California was not even in the union yet. So then you have Arizona, all those, they are more like the Wild Wild West. They are not really involved. So, of course, I mean, we talk about historically, the Wild Wild West states have a more independent spirit. Like you can't control how we feel and how we vote, that kind of vibe. But of course, every state can be changed, with law. I mean, you talk about Florida as one example, but another example, I suddenly cannot remember the state which was used to be very red and then now become very blue, because I suddenly can remember it's quite a nice touristy place.
The one with the bridge, right? Is it the one with the bridge?
Yeah, suddenly, yeah, it's 50 states. When you have 50 states, right, it is kind of Colorado. Colorado used to be like a bedrock for conservative headquarters for many Christian ministries and things like that.
Wow.
But within one or two cycles, they became deep blue. And of course, there are many reasons for that. There's Mark Zuckerberg's cash and things like that. Which, by the way, sidetrack a little bit. Did you hear that Mark Zuckerberg declared himself to be a libertarian?
Yeah.
And okay, just talk a little bit because it kind of like, like because libertarian is kind of like a fluid definition, but 2 points he mentioned, which I don't know, is he trying to create a new image because he start to hire a lot of Republican and things like that. So he said, what does it mean to be a libertarian? He said, one hostility against government regulation. So he said that Meta is being over-regulated or things like that. Then secondly, he said libertarian will demonstrate skepticism over so-called social justice. So he wants to move away from woke critical race theory. I don't know. I mean, it's like, a snake could change the skin over and over and over again, right?
Well, is it actually, this statement came after the Google trial, right?
Yeah, it's interesting with the antitrust that's happening. And so, when you're being challenged in that extent, I guess there are only two responses. You either change your skin or you double down. So far, Google had chosen to double down. And Meta, well, I don't know.
I think maybe they just want to lay low, stay under the radar and things like that. But actually, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is hardly a libertarian.
No, of course not. I mean, he tried to promote himself. But one of the things I would say about the tech people is that I would say their nature, they are not ideologue. But of course, you look at someone like Jack Dorsey of those day Twitter, go there. I mean, he looks more like he's on
Cult leader.
He's on what?
He looks like a cult leader.
Yeah, cult leader. But I want to say he looks like he had too much cannabis or something like that before he go to the Senate. He's like very dazed at that. So I don't think they are ideologue, but probably they're quite easily molded to a certain extent. But of course, you get you get Trump supporter in the tech industry like Peter Thiel and all these people. So there's a bit of contention. I mean, for politics to be healthy, you need contention, right? You need a debate, you need a discussion. But which brings us back to this election. Kamala Harris doesn't want to talk and let her policy be tested.
Exactly.
And it's like everything is so sanitized, and every time they let her talk a little bit more, then disaster here, disaster there. So yeah, I mean, so that going back to the swing state, I mean, people really need to kind of, because swing state, they are like, you need to earn my respect. They have that kind of creed. But I totally agree with you. This is not the time to play with fire, because if you choose wrongly, then I mean, we always assume that people, when their wallets are hurt, when their tummies are not filled, their brain will work. But apparently that's not true, right?
I think because there is actually one of the Marxist way of actually condition people is you don't give them the pain in totality, because then people are like shocked and then they will just retaliate. So imagine like what Hamas did earlier on. So they did execute an old woman like live on day one, and yet after that they sort of like muted down, like, hey, let's come to the discussion table and things like that. So but they do it like occasionally to keep you on toes. So I felt like it's also very similar tactic that the mainstream media is also using as well to sort of condition you to like, hey, it's bad, but it's not so bad. And you kind of like just sort of, okay, I just need to like get by my day. And maybe because of that, people are, although they are, the wallet is really, really been hurt, they don't, it's like the brain or the common sense doesn't come back to them.
So somehow somehow the mainstream media especially are creating a hook on their emotions that cause them to be, I mean, I guess the only words to describe is irrational, right? And I mean, we are seeing irrational behavior among voters. I mean, we said a few times already in Malaysia, certain states, certain constituency are being abused, not given the thing, but again and again and again, they voted for the same corrupt government. So that's democracy. But anyway, what other interesting things about the swing states? Okay, maybe now one of the things now you mentioned about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point. Of course, Turning Point is becoming one of the very legitimate force, in the MAGA movement for Donald Trump. But even then, in every battle you have to choose, right? You only have limited ammunition. For example, you go to a battle, you have 6 bullets, you have 2 guns, 12 bullets. I mean, if you fire 12 in the first 30 seconds, that's it, you're gone. You have to be very selective, you have to be very strategic. So Turning Point decided to kind of deploy their considerable resource into Arizona this time, because I mean that's Charlie Kirk's call, and I think it's a right call because they have the grassroots there. So I find it very interesting that you can have one entire movement just focusing on specific state and trying to turn it. So that's one of the things that really caught my attention in this cycle.
Yeah. And also I think another one, I mean, although this is kind of like unrelated to swing states, I mean, you also have like the union members, although the union itself is saying that we are not choosing sides, we're not endorsing anyone, and yet you have the data that is actually showing that union members flocked to Trump after Democrats basically ditched Biden. So I think what really held them together was actually Biden, not really Harris, if you look at it that way. So I mean, even when you look at how Harris was on Oprah Winfrey's show,
Such an elitist kind of behavior,
oh my
right?
goodness. I mean, even Oprah Winfrey also
I mean, she looked a
She
bit
looked
like.
frustrated also.
I mean, I just saw short clips, and she was like, "You're kidding me, right?" You know, that kind of expression. She's kind of like taken a bit aback. It's like normally you can at least put out a show that you are trying. You know, Obama was great in that. You know, put out a show and say all the right things, but Kamala couldn't even stick to the script. So that's a good thing, I think, because people need to be. People need to see things for what it really is. Now since you talk about the Teamsters, right, which is the second largest labor union in the whole country, and it is kind of related. I mean, you mentioned it is of course it's a nationwide union, but they have a lot of members in swing states, and the fact that they don't endorse it, I mean, their statement come out is like, we don't like both candidates and things like that, but actually it's a slap to Kamala because the last few election cycle, they are always supporting Democrat. And it's almost like the mind control, right? You know, once the mind control is taken off, people suddenly are free to choose. And so that probably has significant impact. I mean, now one of the things I want to ask you, what do you think about the poll? You know, what's your perspective on the poll right now? And because one of the things, which I notice is people don't want to talk so much about the poll because of the last two election cycle was just so disastrous for them. But can we totally ignore the poll?
I don't think so. I mean, I was also trying to gauge the mood as well. I think, as in, sometimes it seems super favorable to Trump that you felt like, are they trying to check out the figures or anything like that? So, but then you also have those that are historically correct in the sense that they accurately predicted what happened in 2016 and also what happened in Brexit as well.
Yep.
So you also have that as, but maybe I'm not sure. I mean, whether or not they're gonna be like another Breitbart where for a while they stop endorsing Trump and then suddenly now like they're coming back. So I hope actually it's gonna be something that is sort of trustworthy because at least you can gauge what are the people thinking, because I mean obviously you have all those mainstream media and even the alternative media that are referencing all these polls as well. So it shows that it is still a very important industry in the States, especially. So I don't think you can totally ditch it because I think we are in a time where data analytics are crucial.
Yeah, I mean, it is big business, first and foremost. There's a lot of money there. And I think a lot of people will be very surprised that the candidate can actually employ their own poster. And it's going to cost them millions and millions. But there are two schools of thought, I think, when it comes to poll. If you can manipulate, actually you can manipulate the poll quite easily based on the reference point. Remember the few episodes, I mean, one of the season during the COVID season, we talk about how people do science paper, research paper, and your frame of reference really defines everything. So it's the same with poll. If you have certain way of referencing and you go and target, so a lot of time people just say, oh, we look at the percentage of the people in the area. But those experienced in politics will say that that's rubbish. You need to look at likely voter. Because if you have for example, I mean, we use a very classic example. There are many Christians who doesn't vote. They haven't voted for 3 or 4 or 5 election cycle. You can safely disregard them in any poll. I mean, let's say in one area, because they are likely not to come to vote. So those are the kind of things. But of course, it's a very granular analysis, just very difficult for normal people to even get a gauge. But here's the two schools of thoughts. If you put someone with a high poll rating, then it might create complacency. And people will like, oh, Trump is 6 point up, 7 point up, no need to vote. Yeah. And we kind of saw that a bit with the primary. It wasn't even a contest at all. And most of the time it's correct. But the other school of thought is the higher poll will give momentum. And which we saw right after Kamala was endorsed as candidate. There was like a shooting up of poll. I mean, and then they say she raised 30 million and things like that. I'm very skeptical about that because I feel like they wanted to create a boost because she was like in no man's land. So that's two schools. But which school do you subscribe more to?
I think the one that is trying to gain momentum. I think you can actually use a certain event to create that sort of momentum that you need, because you don't want people to be lackluster and not trying to, like, because you're really less than 40 days to election already, so you don't want people to lose that sort of momentum, but you shouldn't have that complacency that is really being put here, because I think why Charlie Kirk is like doubling down is really because he don't want people to think that, hey, we are like out by a lot of points here, so we can just chill. Maybe I don't really have to vote, but in certain states it makes a whole lot of difference when you have a lot of people that are going out to vote on the day, and I think that will sort of cause the mainstream media to be really like enlightened.
And so I think because of time restriction, we're going to talk one more point, and it will be so remember Democrats, one of the episode we mentioned that they are really, because of the whole Hamas kind of thing, which the liberal Jews are their traditional bloc, and then the Muslim Arab are also their bloc, but because of this they are like kind of fighting, and that is one of the reasons speculated why Kamala Harris didn't choose Governor Shapiro, because Pennsylvania is so important for her to win. So one of the things that coming out, of course, and we saw this, one of the mayor of a town in Michigan, Hamtramck, I think the town, Amir Galib, Muslim, came out and endorsed Trump. And people are saying that this could be bigger than it seems, and that's the kind of thing, right, that you have this kind of unexpected announcement support which can push momentum here and there.
I think what's most interesting is that people are really beginning to show the true colors of Kamala, and also actually true colors of Trump as well, that he's actually not racist. He's actually a very funny person to hang out with and things like that. So I think it's really a lot of testimony. I think the evidence that is gonna unfold over the next 40 days that begin to show that, hey, which one has more credible character that you want to vote for.
Yeah, so we'll be doing more of these episodes, I think, because I really think it will go down the wire. It's going to be competitive. It's not just because of cheating and things like that, just because the country is quite divided. I think that is a fact. But people just need to make the right decision. I mean, we talk about Malaysia was very divided, 2014, 2018, but eventually we still make a choice.